The high-pressure emergency sirens inside the orbital mess hall of the Imperial Tactical Academy didn't just blare. They screamed in a harsh, dual-frequency pulse that caused 60 future Starfleet commanders to drop their silver synthetic protein trays in utter panic. Above the central dining terrace, a bright red holographic warning grid flashed wildly against the reinforced steel bulkheads. Critical thermal hazard detected. Sector 4 Mess Hall. Active toxic/volatile liquid consumption in progress. Alien cadets scramble backward, their anti-gravity chairs scraping loudly against the polished deck plates. Two multi-jointed Vraxian officers knocked over their water cups, their optical stalks extending to maximum length in pure, unadulterated terror. A thick armored Gorgon warlord, capable of surviving a point-blank kinetic grenade, instinctively drew his sidearm and backed away 3 full meters. In the dead center of the panic zone sat a 21-year-old human engineering cadet named David. David was wearing a grease-stained gray shipboard jumpsuit with the sleeves rolled past his forearms. He had been working a 20-hour graveyard shift down in the starship's primary fusion drive core, manually recalibrating plasma conduits. His eyes were bloodshot, his knuckles were black with carbon soot, and his jaw was set in the tired, unyielding scowl of a man who had forgotten what sleep felt like. On the metal table in front of him sat a dark, thick ceramic mug labeled Terran Fleet Mechanics, Grade 5. From inside the mug, a pitch-black, pitch-thick liquid was visibly bubbling. White steam, rich with the pungent aroma of concentrated roasted beans and heavy neurotoxins, curled upward, melting the synthetic plastic trim on the edge of the table. A thermal scanner on the wall above David's head projected the live temperature reading in glowing orange letters. Temperature, 98.4 degrees Celsius, near boiling. Contents, 100% concentrated caffeine-enriched alkaloid solution. High Commander Valen, a 7-foot-tall, 6-armed Krellian officer whose natural biochitin armor was polished to a mirror shine, stepped into the mess hall, flanked by 4 heavily armed elite enforcers. Valen had spent his morning delivering a lecture on the biological superiority of armored species over unarmored Deathworlders. Seeing the commotion, his 4 eyes narrowed into thin, aristocratic slits. "Cadet David!" Valen's synthesized voice boomed through the hall, vibrating the steel roof beams overhead. "What is the meaning of this illegal hazardous material deployment? You are violating Interstellar Safety Regulation 404. That liquid is registering at thermal threshold limits capable of causing severe cellular destruction to organic tissue." Beside Valen, an elite Vraxian scout let out a low, mocking click from his mandibles, stepping forward with an arrogant strut. "Look at the fragile soft skin," the Vraxian sneered, his voice carrying clearly across the silent room. "His species has no natural armor, no venom spikes, and no chitin plating. Yet he sits there with a bowl of industrial solvent, pretending his weak digestive system can handle raw thermal energy. He probably brought it out just to gain attention from his superiors. Put it down, human, before you melt your own fragile mouth." A few alien cadets in the back row chuckled softly, their confidence returning under the protection of the High Commander and his enforcers. David didn't jump. He didn't drop his gaze. He slowly set down his metal spoon, which had already turned hot from being rested in the liquid, and looked up at the Vraxian scout and High Commander Valen. His pale blue eyes were completely flat. There was no fear, no hesitation, and no annoyance. Only a cold, ancient, exhaustion-driven clarity that made the temperature in the room feel like it had plummeted 20 degrees. "This isn't an industrial solvent," David said. His voice was raspy, dry, and low, cutting through the rhythmic hum of the room's environmental filters. "It's coffee." Valen stepped closer, his heavy claws hovering near his sidearm. "It is a Class 3 central nervous system stimulant mixed with boiling water. The temperature alone is sufficient to scorch internal organs. In the Imperial Fleet, such compounds are classified as chemical weapons used exclusively for biological warfare." "In the Imperial Fleet, maybe," David replied softly. He leaned forward, resting his heavy forearms on the steel table. "Back on Earth, we call this Monday morning." The Vraxian scout sneered again, taking a step toward the table. You lie, human. No organic throat can process liquid at near-boiling temperatures without immediate neuroshock and systemic shutdown. I challenge you to take a single drop in front of this assembly. You will weep and demand an emergency medical stasis bay. The entire room went deathly silent. 60 future galactic commanders held their breath. The automatic medical droids in the ceiling corner activated their emergency stretchers, anticipating immediate internal hemorrhaging. David looked down at the dark, bubbling mug. He didn't wait for a timer. He didn't use a cooling fan. He didn't even blow on the surface to lower the temperature by a single degree. He reached out with his bare right hand, wrapped his calloused fingers around the ceramic handle, ignoring the fact that the handle itself was hot enough to leave faint heat marks on Lightworlder skin, and lifted the mug to his lips. A thick plume of 98 degrees Celsius steam washed directly over David's nose and eyes. He didn't blink. Then, in one smooth, deliberate, unhurried motion, David tilted the mug back and took a massive, heavy gulp of the boiling, jet-black liquid. Slurp. The sound echoed through the silent mess hall like a kinetic shot. David swallowed. The glowing thermal monitor on the wall instantly spiked as the boiling liquid traveled down his esophagus. Internal thermal spike registered. Body temperature elevated. Adrenal glands activating. The Vraxian scout's optical stalks retracted in pure, horrified shock. High Commander Valen's lower left claw twitched, his mouth opening in complete disbelief. David didn't scream. He didn't double over in pain. He didn't drop the cup. He took a second gulp. Then a third. He didn't stop until the entire mug was completely empty. He set the heavy ceramic mug back down onto the metal table with a dull, heavy thud. A faint, wispy trail of steam literally escaped from between David's lips as he let out a long, slow, contented breath. The red flush of exhaustion on his face began to recede, replaced by a sharp, terrifyingly focused glint in his pupils as 200 milligrams of raw, unadulterated caffeine slammed straight into his bloodstream. David wiped his mouth with the back of his hand, looking straight at the trembling Vraxian scout. You guys spend trillions of credits building energy shields and thermal insulation suits to survive harsh environments, David said, his voice dropping into a low, gravelly rumble. Your bodies are designed to protect you from the world outside. He stood up from the table. At 6 feet tall, he wasn't the biggest creature in the room, but as he stepped forward, the Gorgon warlord and the Vraxian scout instinctively took 2 full steps backward. Humans come from a planet where the environment tried to kill us from the inside out for 3 million years, David continued, picking up his empty mug. We don't need heat shields to protect us from hot liquid. Our bodies process heat, poison, and fatigue because if we didn't, our ancestors wouldn't have survived their first winter. David walked right past High Commander Valen, his heavy work boots thudding against the steel floorboards. As he reached the doorway of the mess hall, he stopped and looked back over his shoulder at the 60 paralyzed alien cadets who were still staring at the thermal warning monitor in total reverent terror. If you think me drinking hot coffee is dangerous, David called back, a faint, cold smile appearing on his face. Wait until you see what happens to my combat effectiveness if I don't get my second cup. The heavy steel emergency doors hissed shut behind him. High Commander Valen stood motionless in the center of the room, slowly looking down at his multi-million credit bio-armor, then back at the empty, scorched spot on the metal table. Slowly, methodically, Valen pulled out his command datapad, accessed the Imperial Fleet Training Manual, and completely deleted the section titled Physical Weaknesses of Soft-Skinned Bipeds. In its place, he typed a single new standing order for all future encounters with Terran forces. Never interrupt a human during his morning ritual.